One of the important aspects of Buddhism is mind development. Then necessarily the question arises, what is developed? Is there anything wrong with our minds? What is the purpose? Why do we try to train our minds? To discipline our minds? We seek liberation. I am delighted to see more and more people meditating. Yet I am not certain everyone understands the real purpose or use of the correct methods. Buddhist meditation has two steps to it. The first is samatha, the attainment of one-pointed concentration. When we learn to focus the mind upon one object and keep it there, we become free from many of the mental aggravations normally experienced. We gain control over what is called the monkey mind, which usually jumps from one object to another ceaselessly. As we continue to discipline our minds, we naturally shift into the second mode, that of vipassana, or insight. Here, the meditator is at deeper levels of consciousness. The intellect is no longer being used. The mind is quiet, relaxed and clear. There is no conflict, no anxiety. When we attain insight at such a deep level that our consciousness is permanently and totally changed, then we enter into the state of enlightenment, the goal of all Buddhist meditators.
Venerable Dr. Ratanasara, we've been friends for a long time, and I've been a student here at the College of Buddhist Studies for an equally long period of time. But I'd like to know, when did you first come to this country?
Well, Mr. Glenn, this is a bit of a history. It was in 1957 I arrived in this country for the first time.
Venerable Dr. Havanpola Ratanasara is a native of Sri Lanka, the resplendent island. His family descends from the Dasanayaka clan, an aristocracy dating back 3 centuries. His father was the chieftain of the village of Havanpola in the northwestern province. Although allowed to wear royal attire, young Ratanasara gave up worldly status for spiritual devotion. At age 11, 62 years ago, he entered the Buddhist order, received a formal monastic education, and was fully ordained as a monk by age 20. He then went abroad to pursue postgraduate studies and education, earning a master's degree from Columbia University in New York and a doctorate at the University of London in 1965. In his early years as a teacher, he was a skilled activist who brought revolutionary changes to his homeland. Most noticeable was the return of Buddhism to social and political prominence in 1956, and by the late 60s, the unprecedented teaching of public schools. During the 70s, he was an advisor to the Ministry of Education and became the founder director of the Postgraduate Institute of Buddhist Studies at the University of Kelaniya. He has traveled to 19 countries, lecturing and participating in seminars on the theme of understanding and cooperation. In 1980, he permanently settled in patron of the Dharma Vijaya Buddhist Vihara, a temple serving the Sri Lankan community. In this multicultural, multi-religious setting of Southern California, Dr. Ratanasara had a vision. For the first time in the long history of Buddhism, here was an opportunity to bring all 9 traditions together in a unified body. Thus, the Buddhist Sangha Council of Southern California and the American Buddhist Congress were born. Dr. Ratanasara is the leading Buddhist prelate in Southern California. His Americanized form of Buddhism is a contribution to American culture that is well recognized by his contemporaries. He is also instrumental in promoting understanding and friendship in the interreligious community, serving on various committees and participating in interfaith dialogue. Unity among Buddhists, amity among religions, the legacy of Venerable Dr. Havanpola Ratanasara. Numerous groups have awarded him citations and degrees, honoring his leadership. In 1989, he opened a national convention with a dialogue between himself and the Dalai Lama. And when His Holiness Pope John Paul II visited Los Angeles in 1987, Dr. Ratanasara was elected to give the Buddhist welcoming speech. Again, he stressed friendship and understanding.
It was at Columbia.
Well, fortunately, my classes started in the evening. So the United Nations session begins in the morning. So during the daytime, I moved to the United Nations and then rushed back for classes in the evening. It's a bit tiring too, but I managed all right.
Well, as if this were not enough, I understand, though, that there were other activities that you were involved in.
That is another thing, yes. Something happened. These news media people, they were very much interested, to publicize this kind of thing, because this was the first thing happening so for a Buddhist monk to join in this kind of assembly. So they publicized a big news item in the Sunday New York Times. As a result of this, number of invitations received, people asking to go there and deliver talk to these certain churches and number of other organizations.
But eventually you came to Los Angeles. How is it that you arrived here?
This was sometime later. In 1978, I had to attend a preparatory committee meeting for the World Conference on Religion and Peace. This was held at Princeton University. And then again I went back to Sri Lanka, and for 1979, General Conference of the WCRP, this World Conference took place. So I had to come for that. So what had happened was, since I was at the university staff of the University of California, I have served enough to get my sabbatical leave. So then I had my sabbatical leave when I went to the Princeton University conference. After the conference, I stayed in Washington. Especially, I thought of writing a book. Then something else happened. In Los Angeles, some of our students, monks from Vidyalanka University, they had come to Los Angeles and started a small beginning to have a Sri Lankan temple. Because there are a number of Sri Lankans here living, so there was a big need to have for them a religious place. So they have been trying to do that, but they had some difficulties. So then, having heard that I was in Washington, they called me. They asked me to come to Los Angeles and to help in these projects.
Imam Bhikkhan Bhikkhu Sanghassa Deva
After helping to establish the first Sri Lankan temple in Los Angeles, Dr. Ratanasara realized that this city, which epitomized the American melting pot, was the place to continue his life's work. Venerable Dr. Doan Kim, a Korean abbot, was one of the first to recognize the value of a common Buddhist community. His temple houses the office of the American Buddhist Congress.
Because in this country, this is a multi-ethnic groups living here. So we promote pluralism. Everybody must live together without any conflicts.
By the late 80s, every Buddhist ethnic group had a community in Los Angeles. Venerable Dr. Thich Mon Joc, Supreme Patriarch of all Vietnamese American Buddhists, listens to Dr. Ratanasara with sympathy, understanding firsthand the need for immigrant groups to come out of isolationism and enter into the American mainstream.
We need the support, attendance, active participation of you and your community.
The 9 Buddhist traditions, despite vastly different appearances and practices, are all rooted in the same original teachings. Here Dr. Ratanasara and Tibetan Lama Venerable Geshe Gyaltsen admire the Tibetan version of the Vinaya, part of a sacred canonical text used by all traditions.
Same pattern.
Yes.
And but the only difference is you have it in this way. You have it in paper.
Yes. Yes.
But Sri Lankan system is, it is very same type.
Yes.
Buddha has so many different kinds of teachings, but this section is the Vinaya section. Yes.
Same Vinaya.
Venerable Dr. Karuna Dharma, abbess of the International Buddhist Meditation Center and the first American woman to be fully ordained as a Buddhist monk, looks on with interest. Tibetan texts are famous throughout the world, and that each page is still printed from a hand-carved wood block.
Oh yeah. So this kind of beginning, Buddha, and then lineage image, then authored image.
Beautiful writing. Wonderful. Very nice. Vinaya is the same in Theravada, Mahayana, and Chinese, everywhere. Same. It's wonderful.
Dr. Ratanasara shares a moment with an old friend, comparing notes and reminiscing about the great Japanese scholar D.T. Suzuki, whose works popularized Zen in the West half a century ago.
Our Buddhist programs are now gradually moving ahead. So I am very happy to tell you that your deputy, Ken-san, now he is also helping us, joining with the Buddhist Sangha Council, and his suggestions, his activities have become added strength to our movement. We are developing a library. This is called Nirvana Library. So this is the model of that joysticks. And this is another nice incense. Broji, I remember Dr. Suzuki when I was in New York, way back in 1957. He was meeting a number of people, talks to different places, and he's made a very big impact in this country on Zen.
The first time he came at that time, so almost a century ago. So it's a long story.
I remember one of his explanations about Zen. Somebody in New York, when I met him there, after a talk, somebody asked, actually, I didn't follow what this Zen philosophy is, Then you know what he said? Dung, dung, dung.
What is that? At the sound of the drum. So I came.
Yes, that's how he answered.
Anyway, it's nice, and I really appreciate this. This like 2.5 year sort of life work that you have been doing in this country to document like this.
Yeah. I think...
Congratulate for you.
Thank you.
You deserve it. See?
And finally, it came that, well, establishing a Buddhist seminary is useful, but when it came to the practical aspect, the members found that it was not possible due to lack of financial support. So then, the second decision was to start some educational institution. So that is the College of Buddhist Studies in Los Angeles. This course on certificate in Buddhist studies has 3 parts. First, Buddhism, then the second one is the Buddhist philosophy, the doctrine as such, and the third part, the practice of Buddhism.
The College of Buddhist Studies is composed of a central office and 12 temples that act as satellite campuses. Each temple is concerned with teaching its own ethnic tradition, while the central office handles the strictly academic. The curriculum is designed to accommodate all, from the serious scholar to the merely curious. Upon completion of this one-year course, these Americans will be qualified to teach Dharma school, the Buddhist equivalent of Sunday school.
Well, or rather, we hear of some criticisms on this observance of rites and rituals in Buddhism. And the college courses, we have the real academic standard here. We have the college courses in 2 levels. One section is called the community courses. That means each different traditions. Now the Chinese Buddhist temple, they can cater to their needs. Chinese form of chanting, Chinese texts, Chinese practices, art, architecture, etc., etc. So is the Japanese community. Those temples can have Japanese style education. And the Koreans, Vietnamese, Sri Lankan, Thai, Cambodian, Laos, Tibetan, all these different traditions, we arrange them to teach those aspects. You know, there are certain rites and rituals, pertaining to these different traditions. So we arrange those temples to do that. But the academic side is quite different. So we handle that.
The College of Buddhist Studies, in partnership with the American Buddhist Congress, plans to use this new feeling of community to build the first complete Buddhist library in the world.
Bhante, you founded the Buddhist Sangha Council here in Southern California. Tell us about that.
We look after the interest of the other Buddhist organizations. From time to time, number of questions come up. Now, we have these 2 important Buddhist temples here. That is, one is that Hacienda Heights, the Chinese Buddhist temple. This is about $28 million spent for that temple. So there was a problem. Some community around that, they objected for the temples coming up.
Compelled to directly confront virulent local prejudice, the Sangha Council, with the aid of its non-Buddhist friends, successfully lobbied for the completion of Shi Lai, one of the largest, most expensive temples in Southern California.
We were able to get that restored. The moment we come here, we see everything is nice, wonderful. So you are doing a very nice job here. And so it gives a lot of pleasure for us to come and see you. I feel at home, whenever I come here.
Dr. Ratanasara and Shi Lai Abbot, Venerable Shindin, savor their success. Each immigrant group coming to the new country must deal with prejudice as it finds its own place in American society. Although Buddhist monks are no longer beaten in the streets for wearing robes, neither are they generally understood. The Asian tendency to stay reserved and deal only with one's own kind contributes to that. And yet American Buddhists, while not as high profile as, say, the Jews, are nearly as great in number. For every 5 Jews in the United States, there are 4 Buddhists. The national population is estimated at up to 5 million, with 500,000 in Southern California alone. Wat Thai Temple in North Hollywood also had local trouble. With the Sangha Council's help, Lord High Abbot Pratapsapon and his monks now enjoy more positive public relations, providing a polling place during elections and inviting neighbors to their festivals. The American Buddhist Congress was a logical outgrowth of the Sangha Council idea. Impressed with the activities in Los Angeles, Reverend Carl Springer and the Vajradhatu Society of Boulder, Colorado invited Dr. Ratanasara to help form a national body in 1986. The Congress provides outreach to Asian immigrants, Buddhist education for the general public, and such humanitarian efforts as an AIDS hospice in the Bay Area. It also supports interreligious events on a national and international level.
I really forgot to mention to you all a very, very significant event that is taking place in 1993. This is the 100th year of Buddhism in this country. The centenary celebration is being organized in Chicago. That was the city where this important parliament of religions met. World Buddhist leaders joined there. So an elaborate program is already made. So we have to give our support in full to this important organization. Program is so big, so we'll have to contribute our part. Because after 100 years of Buddhism in this country, but now it is the time that we, through the American Buddhist Congress, will have to help.
This relates to the Interreligious Council of Southern California. Just how does that fit together?
There are about 10 different religious groups jointly working in the Interreligious Council of Southern California. So I am very happy to join with them, because even in Sri Lanka I have been doing this kind of interreligious activities. So that in Southern California, this organization is about 21 years old now. So we get along very well. We discuss each other's problems.
So we vote before your vision statement. We vote before your vision statement.
Well, that would be part of the vision. That would be an interesting programmatic part. I mean, Eric does this all the time. So.
The Interreligious Council of Southern California boasts a membership of 120 churches, temples, and synagogues representing 7 world religions. Besides promoting understanding of different faiths, the Interreligious Council set a precedent in 1984 by providing clergy for the Olympic athletes. After the Los Angeles riots, the Council formed the Interfaith Coalition to Heal LA, a long-term action committee of volunteers whose first task was to stage the Hands Across LA event. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese, which helped found the Interreligious Council, makes a special contribution by having one-on-one dialogue with each religious group, then publishing the discourses in pamphlets.
The dialogue itself is an ongoing dialogue we've been having for a couple of years now, where we discuss various issues that are common to both Buddhism and Roman Catholicism.
The declaration of Nostra Aetate, the recognition of certain non-Christian religions, initiated an eagerness among Catholics to explore new ways of thinking. Buddhist leaders in Los Angeles, however, entered dialogue with reticence. Fear and distrust of Christians had developed among Buddhists during colonial times, and these lingering doubts were brought openly to the table. But dialogue brought a new understanding and friendship. Buddhist leaders were able to assuage the fears of their colleagues. At this session, Reverend Gregory Elmer, Reverend Vivian Ben Lima, and Dr. Ratanasara compare the role of the individual in their faiths.
So taking the individual as the important person, Buddhism recognizes the intelligence, capabilities, and all potentialities of an individual.
Dr. Ratanasara is a Buddhist elder who respects the traditions of the 2,500-year-old religion, while he is able to open his mind to the contemporary needs of today's global village. Being custodian of 4 Buddhist temples in Sri Lanka, Dr. Ratanasara travels to his native land annually. 2 years ago, he laid the foundation for establishing a higher institute of Buddhist education at the Sri Ratnavihara International Temple he founded in a village near the capital of Colombo. The Sri Lankans are a very pious people. So ingrained is Buddhism in their culture that it is common practice for sons to enter the order and serve as monks for a limited time. This brings honor and merit to the entire family. Last year, when he visited his ancient monastic school, Dr. Ratanasara gave these novices a lecture on how to apply the ancient codes of monks' behavior in modern times.
කරුණු විචුන් වහන්සේලාට මේ ආකල්ප දිනු කර ගැනීම සඳහා දේශනා කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ සූත්‍රයේ තියෙන කාරණා ගැන ඒ සූත්‍රයෙන් සඳහන් කරනවා අභින්නම් පත්තේ කිතබ්බන් කියලා.
In recognition of his dedicated service to Buddhism in the United States, he was given a rare appointment on December 27, 1990 by the Malwata chapter of the Siamese Buddhist lineage, the largest and most prestigious council of elders in Sri Lanka. The ceremony held in the ancient Buddhist city of Kandy bestowed on him the title of Patriarch of the Theravada Buddhist tradition of North and South America. This stewardship charged him with full ecclesiastical care and judicial power over the Sri Lankan Buddhist communities in the Western Hemisphere. Honored along with him for their lasting contributions to Buddhism in the United States were his American Buddhist Congress co-presidents, Venerable Dr. Do-An Kim and Venerable Dr. Karuna Dharma.
මේ පදවියේ කටයුතු ඉතාම හොඳින් කරගෙන යාමට ඒ වගේම තමන් ඒ රටේ කරගෙන යන කටයුතු තව තවත් පුළුල් අන්දමින් කර ගැනීමට මේ නායක පදවිය උපයෝගී.
Venerable Dr. Ratanasara now holds the highest position, that of being one of only 5 patriarchs in Sri Lanka.
Venerable Dr. Havanpola Ratanasara, you have been conferred the highest honor by Malwata chapter. Venerable Sir, what are your views about this?
Well, Mr. Haridasa, my views are slightly different from the average person's. According to my feelings, I have not added anything to my personal stature, if I am to speak so. This reminds me of an old incident. Way back in 1957, when I went to the Columbia University for my postgraduate studies, at that time, late Mr. Bandaranaike, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, he requested me to represent Sri Lanka along with the Sri Lankan delegation. So this was quite a new thing, because I was the first Buddhist monk to represent that august body. So news people, media people were very much interested, and they were looking for me. But being unable to contact me, they contacted my professor there. So the professor concerned was a very honorable gentleman, an elderly person, Professor Twexbury. Then on the same day evening I had to attend his class. So then when I was there, Professor pointed out me and he asked me, well, we have heard that you are appointed to the United Nations as a delegate. How do you feel about it? Then I was quite unassumed of the situation. So I said, well, there is nothing unusual. Well, that was a nice thing. And are you not excited? I said, I don't see anything to be excited. Then Professor got back and spoke to the students. He said, now you look, see the cultural differences. He is not moved so much by these things. And he started to talk about our cultural differences and mentioned about the Buddhist way of thinking. So this is what I have to say about your question. By this new appointment, I am not much moved. But one thing, I have some allegiance to my own religious traditions. So Mallatta chapter is my own chapter in the Buddhist order. So the chief, the Mahanayaka Thera, and the Karaka Sangha Sabha, they have decided unanimously that this new office title should be given to me. So I think I have to comply with their wishes.
All the village of Iriyawadiya turned out to greet Dr. Ratanasara as he returned to open a new temple for them, the Sri Ratnavihara International, located just outside the capital of Colombo. Distinguished foreign monks, fellow patriarchs of the Mulwada chapter, and former Prime Minister Mrs. Bandara Nayaka took part in the ceremony.
Dr. Ratanasara, as a leader of the Buddhist community, you're doing a great deal of ecumenical work in this country. What is your program and what are your objectives?
I do teach to students, those who come to my college and to the temple. So I'm doing that.
You bring knowledge about Buddhism.
That's right, yeah. And also there are quite a good number of Buddhist Asians here. They are coming from 9 different traditions. So when I visited Los Angeles way back in 1979, I saw this specialty here. Because in Asia, they are separate by countries. But here, they all are here in the city.
The Inter-Religious Council, what role does that play in your work as a Buddhist?
Well, we are getting to increase our understanding, mutual understanding, different religions.
As to the Interreligious Council, the Los Angeles interreligious relationships are probably greatly advanced compared to what is happening or has happened in most other cities throughout the country. Most of the interreligious activities in the rest of the country still limit themselves to Protestant, Catholic, Jew, or increasingly now Christian, Jew, Muslim. Los Angeles pioneered this years ago when we started the Interreligious Council, and while we too started Protestant, Catholic, Jew, soon included Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Mormons, Baha'is, Sikhs, all of whom have been constantly active in the council for about 20 years now. Certainly, the presence of the Buddhist community here, and they are in Los Angeles in large numbers, has enriched our cultural and our religious life. It has opened completely new attitudes in the hearts and minds of what had been the dominant religions, and it challenges us to think in far wider and more open terms about the whole idea of religion, because Buddhists come to us with the rather alarming statement that they have a very deeply spiritual religion without a God concept. This is just one of the many challenges that comes to us and which gives us a far better understanding and appreciation of our own religion.
In our dialogue with the Buddhist community, it's a whole new experience. Things, as Rabbi mentioned, we're dealing with a community whose understanding is not of a deity. That's a whole world leap for us. So along with the social and political things are the theological, religious terms. We're on a whole new encounter with Buddhism in the Roman Catholic community. We're on the very early edge of this. We're just in the sort of engagement period where we're testing the waters. We're very, very early. Very different, say, than the long history of Catholic-Jewish dialogue, at least a history of some 25 or 30 years of the Second Vatican Council.
This whole idea of creating friendship through dialogue between the various religions is, in my opinion, one of the most wonderful innovations in modern society. It is the one innovation on which we can indeed build hope for the future. But that future is still very much in the distance. It will take several generations and will be successful only if we insist that these generations continue the efforts which were begun just a short quarter of a century ago.
Dr. Ratanasara and Dr. Hatut discuss how the interreligious community as a body can deal with a common enemy, crime.
We are living in this city in danger.
Yes.
So every now and then we get some kind of alarming news. People break into houses, they shoot, they snatch their bags, yes. And 2 days ago her bag was stolen. The day daylight, when she was in the room, just come in.
Yeah.
They went go there. You can't take them, they will have knife or something, So we are just helpless now.
Yes.
In the city. Night time is very dangerous, even daytime there is no safety.
That's true.
So, I have an idea. Shall we have a resolution, move at the Inter-Religious Council, requesting all our member religious groups to have a joint program to combat this ever-rising crime?
Yeah, I think the most important word is concrete. Because what I'm afraid of is the Inter-Religious Council issues a statement that crime is bad and peace is good and things like that. I think I would even invite some consultant from police department or law enforcement or something, or detective agent or what have you, to tell us what we are supposed to be doing. Because I agree with you 100% that we came to America to enjoy freedom.
Sure.
Now we are under curfew, like any dictatorship. After sunset, you can't walk in the streets, like totalitarian regime. And you are not dealing with one dictator. You are dealing with any bum on the street can be a dictator, can threaten your life and can disfigure you forever, and can get away with it. And the drugs and the pornography and the exploitation and what have you, I think this definitely should come to an end, and I support you 100% in that respect.
Thank you. We should do something really concrete, not just statements.
No, not just statements are easy. We can issue one now.
Wilshire Boulevard Temple is the oldest Jewish temple in Los Angeles and a founding member of the Inter-Religious Council. Senior Rabbi Harvey Fields pledges his support in the war on crime.
And it's absolutely a delight to welcome you, Dr. Ratanasara, and you, Karuna. Both have been very much involved in our Inter-Religious Council for many years, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to my office and to my home here at Wilshire Boulevard Temple.
Thank you, Rabbi. Well, Rabbi Phil, today's visit is a kind of lobbying tactics. You know, we are really ashamed to live in this big city, great city, in the midst of ever alarming situation in crime. So we claim ourselves the Inter-Religious Council for 20 years or more. But I think the time we spent for understanding each other groups is quite enough. So we must be able to launch a strong, meaningful program to combat this ever-rising crime. You know, at the meeting also, IRC meeting, I remember you mentioned about something to do this thing. So at the same time, we have been developing some program to embark upon on this project. So especially the Islamic community, the President, Dr. Hathout, and myself, you know, we have discussed this matter. And we will be sending you a formal resolution to be submitted to the IRC. And I wish you will support this resolution.
I'm just delighted for this kind of an initiative because, as you know, I have been calling upon the Inter-Religious Council to go beyond the outstanding dialogue that has taken place over the course of, as you indicated, 20 plus years between religious leaders in this community. This last year, the development of the widening of that dialogue to members of our faith groups. And next year we anticipate the doubling of those numbers so that we will have hopefully 250, 300 people from various different faith groups involved in dialogue, getting to know one another, building bridges of understanding with one another, creating a kind of heart of consciousness and of sensitivity to one another here in this city. I think all of that is very important, but we need to move into a much more activist posture. And it was one of the reasons why I am so anxious to have our Inter-Religious Council look at issues like what's going on with the children and youth in our society.
Teenagers.
How can we live in a city like Los Angeles, one of the great cities of the world, and have gangs at war, literally, with one another. Mothers shooting at young children because they suspect them of having shot at their children. So I'm really very much interested, and I'm very much anxious to see what you are suggesting, you and Dr. Hathout, by way of a resolution.
Thank you, Rabbi. We, the Buddhist group, we do appreciate your leadership giving through Inter-Religious Council this year. So
Thank
really we see some change in it, and you are willing to go forward and do something really.
It's called putting some muscle on the bones.
That's right.
Right, we need to do that.
Three days later, the Los Angeles riots broke out. In a scant 48 hours, 1,500 buildings were destroyed and thousands of jobs went up in smoke. Buddhists, maintaining their tradition of nonviolence and non-judgment, took a nonpartisan stance, being concerned with the welfare of all parties involved.
This situation, this riot is very special to us, the Buddhist community living here. Sarvavijaya Buddhist Vihara is situated in between two major communities. These are the two major communities involved in these recent riots greatly.
Now, in one side, we are in the Koreatown. We are in the border line of the black community. So, we have to be very careful, and we'll have to care for all parties concerned. I think this is in keeping with our Buddhist principles. We are expected to follow the middle path. So whenever there is a conflict of this nature, as usual, our traditional Buddhist principles will have to be observed.
It was exciting for me to first meet the Buddhists when I worked with the Olympics in 1984, because I was introduced to Dr. Ratanasara at that time. Because in 1980, at the 1984 Olympics, it was the very first time in the history of the Olympics that religious communities were served. The athletes from all over the world represented world religions, and so the Inter-Religious Council felt it was enormously important for the athletes to be able to have religious leaders there for them and with them. So I met Dr. Ratanasara and the members of his Buddhist community as we arranged for someone to serve the Buddhists who came, the Buddhist athletes who came to the Olympics. I also was very, very impressed with the way that Dr. Ratanasara took the lead in Los Angeles to bring the Buddhists together. And so through the Inter-Religious Council and through Dr. Ratanasara's work, I've had the opportunity to meet many Buddhists from all over the world. In fact, a very treasured moment for me was when I was introduced to the Dalai Lama. So the Inter-Religious Council has greatly benefited from the work of the Buddhist community here in Los Angeles. The other part of my work working with the Buddhist community has been at the retreat settings, to have an opportunity to meet people at the Inter-Religious Council retreats. For me to find, I'm a Roman Catholic, so for me to understand Buddhism in the person of the Buddhists that I had met and through Dr. Ratanasara, it's helped me to understand the depth of the tradition, and for me to appreciate at an experiential level this very rich and old tradition. As a Roman Catholic, I believe I have a very rich and old tradition, so our conversations are always very meaningful, and I have great respect for the tradition, not only just at an intellectual level, but also at an experiential level.